at last, it is all over. Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov, has officially retired from the UFC. And at 29-0, it is inarguable that he is one of the greatest fighters of all time. And to think he did it all in a sport where just one punch could end everything, yet Khabib always seemed to be in control. And now that he has retired, people will be asking, is he the greatest of all time? If not, where does he rank? If you have any of those answers, please let me know in the comments below. But for right now, I want to focus on where he came from and where he was going. This is the life and career of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib was born September 20th, 1988 in Dagestan, Russia, a place where he would not only live, but train for all his fights as well. And to say that Khabib was born for this is a bit of an understatement, as Dagestan is home to many UFC fighters and Olympic gold medalists in judo and wrestling, so he was right at home in the fighting game. But it also didn't hurt that Khabib's father converted the entire first floor of their house into a fight gym. Now this was to make sure that the kids in the region did not get sucked into Islamic extremism. However, this also gave Khabib the perfect place to really start honing in his fight skill. This was a very big deal to Abdulmanap, who not only was Khabib's coach throughout his entire UFC run, but the two were also extremely close, as father and son should be. And watching these fighters at his dad's gym is what really inspired Khabib to start fighting. So at the ripe old age of 8, he started wrestling. And within 1 year, as we all know, he was wrestling bears. And it wasn't long into his teen years when he would start training in Sambo and Judo. This is also when he would start getting a taste for MMA, and soon after that, he would start fighting and the legend of Khabib would be born. Khabib then jumped onto the scene, winning 4 fights in less than a month, 3 of which came in a Grand Prix tournament that, of course, Khabib won. And that is when the UFC would come calling, offering Khabib a 6-fight run in the promotion in late 2011. And in early 2012, he would make his dominant debut. This part of Khabib's life would also be marked by the same thing that marked every other part of his life: domination, beating guys like Michael Johnson, Edson Barboza, and Rafael dos Anjos. Now, you would think that after all these notable wins, Khabib would be in line for a title shot. Well, he would have been if somebody by the name of Conor McGregor wasn't also dominating the scene in his own right. It took Khabib 5 years and 9 UFC fights to finally find himself in the UFC's title picture, and this was only because Conor was stripped of his title due to inactivity. But it didn't matter. Khabib was there, and it was time. It was now that the stage was set, finally, after such a long time. UFC 223, Khabib versus Al Iaquinta. And now, unfortunately for Al, Khabib only went out there and did what he went the distance. But it was clear to everyone Khabib was the better man. After the fight, however, there was only one question on everyone's mind. Would Khabib dare challenge Conor? Now, although Khabib was the lightweight champion, calling out Conor McGregor for a fight was not the popular decision, as Conor was still overwhelmingly the fan favorite. So this did not win him any new fans. In fact, most people saw it as a way for Conor just to get his belt back. Everyone was writing Khabib off. Now, if you go back to the call-out, you'll hear that Khabib called Conor a chicken, which to most people would probably seem kind of innocuous, kind of a funny thing to say. However, that is one of the worst things that you could call somebody in Dagestan. So, the stage was set, although Conor didn't even really know it. However, when one of Conor's friends decided it was a good idea to call Khabib a chicken, things kind of escalated into, well, only one of the most controversial moments in UFC history. And one of Conor's friends, Artem Labov, came to Conor's defense, calling Khabib a chicken. Now, this did not sit well with Khabib, as we already said, calling somebody a chicken in Russia is one of the worst things that you could call them. So, Khabib did the only thing that he thought he should do. confront Artem out front of a UFC event. Now, of course, this did not sit well with Conor McGregor, so naturally, he got on a flight from Ireland with a bunch of his friends to go confront Khabib. And, well, I think we all know how that went. Conor found Khabib at Barclays Center as he was getting on a bus and decided to throw a dolly through the window, injuring a bunch of fighters on the inside. This was absolutely what the fight needed. More press, more pub, and more fame for Khabib and Conor. After that, Khabib found himself in a very weird situation. He was not only the villain, he was the underdog for the first time in his career, and he reveled in it, knowing that the only person who stood in his way between greatness and mediocrity was Conor McGregor, and he would not let that opportunity go by him. And once again for Khabib, the stage was set. Conor McGregor, UFC 229 for the World Lightweight Championship. However, it wasn't just the championship these guys were fighting for. It was also pride, glory, and of course, bragging rights. And all throughout the fight, one thing was clear. Khabib was not going home without that championship. That's why in the fourth round, the legend of Conor McGregor stopped, and the legend of Khabib really began, as a neck crank ended the fight, and the World Lightweight Championship would stay home with Khabib. But it was after the fight that would raise the most eyebrows and cement Khabib as one of the most controversial and polarizing figures in UFC history. After the fight, Khabib clearly had enough to jump the cage and go right at Conor's jiu-jitsu partner, Dillon Danis. Now this was not only one of the biggest blemishes on Khabib's record, but one of the worst moments in UFC history, and both fighters rightly received suspensions. But all that made Khabib do was wait and train and plot his comeback, which would be epic. And after a 9-month suspension and nearly a year off, the next fight materialized. In this case, it was Dustin Poirier fighting for the World Lightweight title. However, unfortunately for Dustin, this fight would go down just like the other 27 in Khabib's career, with complete domination and a third-round submission. After this fight, Khabib was seen to be on top of the world, another big name that he had defeated, another championship defense. However, little did Khabib know that his toughest battle would soon rear its ugly head. It was now 2020, and the coronavirus pandemic was in full swing, and unfortunately for Khabib, the entire country of Russia was on lockdown, so even when another opponent was named in Justin Gaethje, he couldn't leave, which prolonged the fight even longer. But it was what happened next which really showed the roadblocks. Khabib's dad, Abdulmanap, was diagnosed with the coronavirus, and he took a turn, unfortunately, for the worst, being hospitalized and put in a medically induced coma. However, he did not recover and died just a few months later after having that on July 3rd, 2020. This was a major blow to Khabib, as it should have been, which was giving him only one thought after his fight with Justin Gaethje, and that was to, unfortunately for the entire fighting world, but good enough for him, was to retire. But the retirement talk had to be put on hold, at least for a second, because he still had one more fight against Justin Gaethje, a striker and wrestler who stacked up to Khabib pretty well. And unfortunately for Justin, just like the other 28 fights in Khabib's career, this one would be quick, this time with a second-round submission. And once again, Khabib was the lightweight champion, and this time for good, because after the fight, Khabib decided to retire. And with one last tweet from Dana White and a relinquishing of the title, one of the greatest careers in mixed martial arts history has come to a close, as Khabib decided to retire. And that is it for Khabib. He is officially retired and out of the UFC for the first time in 8 years. Now I have a question. Do you think Khabib is one of the greatest fighters of all time, or the greatest fighter of all time? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like MMA, UFC content, there's going to be a lot more coming, so please subscribe and like and leave a comment and let me know how you feel. As for myself, I am Ruben, and I am out.